my goal is by the beginning of June, I at least want to have 500 subscribers by June. Garfield. Hey furries, welcome back to Garfield. I am, of course, Jim Davis. You ever heard of this comic strip called Garfield? Back in June of 1978, when people actually still read the newspaper, a new comic strip appeared showing a cartoonist named John and his obese cat, Garfield. Seriously, this thing looks like it's over half the size of his owner. And somehow, this comic strip became a hit, and it's been going on for over 40 years. Garfield is as old as the Simon game, and over those 40 years, many different variations of the characters have come into the media. There was that Garfield and Friends show that was on in the late 80s, whatever the hell that newer show on Cartoon Network was, and, of course, the 2004 live-action movie. I feel like I need to point out the fact that I love this movie. I would watch this so many times while growing up. In fact, I mentioned it in one of my earliest videos. The live-action Garfield movie that was released in 2004 and has terrible ratings is my favorite movie of all time. I freaking obsessed over this movie. For some people it was The Lion King, for others it was E.T. But the movie that I completely wore out was the goddamn live-action Garfield movie. I don't know why, something about this movie just resonated with me. I remember laughing at all the jokes and getting really invested in the story. So recently I decided to rewatch it for the first time in well over a decade. And it's completely terrible. So the movie starts with a showcase of how deeply obsessed with Garfield John is. Every single picture has Garfield in it, including 2 pictures from the day that he adopted him. That alone is enough to raise many questions, but the main one that I have is who the hell is taking these pictures? We're quickly introduced to our main characters. Garfield, who looks so ungodly terrifying that I'm surprised I didn't have nightmares about him. He's played by Bill Murray, which is all good except for the fact that Bill Murray didn't actually know that he was signing up for a Garfield movie, so that's great. And John Arbuckle, played by Breckin Meyer, which is an interesting casting choice considering he looks absolutely nothing like John. The first 5 minutes of this movie do not matter at all. It's just a few scenes of Garfield cucking John, so let's just skip ahead to something that, at least to the writers, is interesting.
Maybe it's changing routes. Maybe this will be the last we'll ever see of it. Come on.
Good God, is that supposed to be normal? You know the gray kitten that was always called the world's cutest kitten? How in God's name does that look anything like him? You put in all the effort to make Garfield look like his comic counterpart, or at least as much effort as you cared to put in, which looking at this now, was not a lot. So why did you just pick up a random stray cat off the street and try and pass him off as normal?
Maybe it's changing routes. Maybe this will be the last we'll ever see of it. Come on, it's just across the street. We're cats. We like milk.
Was Normal a boy in the 80s cartoon? I'm pretty sure he was voiced by a girl.
That's right, it's me, Normal, the world's cutest kitty cat.
I can see the whole neighborhood.
You are literally not even on the second story of the house. Garfield sees a pie across the street, somehow, and Garfield being Garfield, he decides to steal an entire pie. Does this cat have diabetes yet? Can cats get diabetes? Wow, I said that as a joke, but apparently cats can actually get diabetes. So he gets past the guard dog and gets to the pie because, of course he does. And to celebrate, he takes the pie and eats it right in front of the guard dog. No, I'm kidding. For some reason, he breaks out into a dance.
Smells like victory. Oh, I hate this fat cat!
Yeah, that dog looks really angry just lying there. So there's a few parts in this movie where it sounds like they just sped up certain parts of Garfield's lines.
I hope so. You're no fun to look at. No thanks, I'm full.
It just seems like a weird thing to edit. Don't get me wrong, nothing about this movie makes sense. But why was that something that they tried to fix, instead of, I don't know, everything else? Also, yeah, just keep your foot a few inches away from a wild mouse. That's really safe.
There's my ball.
I swear this movie was great when I was younger. So Garfield runs outside and somehow manages to catch up to the mouse, even though he had about a 10-second head start, and in order to try and make John happy, which makes absolutely no sense considering that up to this point he has shown no interest in being an actual cat. He pretends to eat him.
See, I knew you could do it if you put your mind to it. You were the best cat a guy could have.
Yeah, that's how you pet a cat. Garfield goes back inside and then John comes back from the grocery store, even though he went inside about a minute before Garfield did. So we can scratch continuity off the never-ending list of things that this movie did wrong.
Garfield, don't even think about it. That's my food.
Yeah, just leave your cat, who's known for eating literally everything in sight, alone in the house with his all-time favorite food. Also, what the hell is John's job? No, really, I've been reading the comics since I was like 5 years old. I don't think I've ever seen him have a job. Sure, he said he was a cartoonist, but not only have we never actually seen him work, that was also 40 years ago, or 25 years ago when this movie came out. When was the last time you actually sat down and read the Sunday comics in a newspaper? He's able to afford a car, a pretty nice house that's just outside of a major city, and is able to buy food for himself, a cat that eats 30 times a day, and later on in this movie, a dog as well. Where the hell is he getting his income? Now we meet the main antagonist of the movie, Happy Chapman, or as I like to call him, the lesser man's Paul Giamatti.
Damned cat allergies.
Why the hell would you agree to have a cat in your act if you're allergic to them? So Happy learns that a nationwide news network is looking for a dog act.
Dog act!
But, oh no, he's stuck here performing at a local news station with a cat, while his brother is a head anchor at a better one.
And everybody always said I was the handsome one. I was the smart one. And I was born first.
You know, as the youngest sibling, I sure hope that my brother doesn't watch all my videos while just angrily monologuing everything that he hates about me.
Garfield! Did you eat all 4 boxes of lasagna?
Oh man, who could have seen that one coming? Also, if you're going to watch this movie for yourself, for whatever reason, a fun game you can play is trying to find all the product placements. I counted 5 in this scene alone.
The only time I ever leave my cul-de-sac is when John takes me to the vet.
John has a cat bed in the passenger seat of his car. Seriously, how lonely is this man? I'm convinced that if John hadn't gotten Garfield, he would have ended up in a different section of the newspaper.
You the man, you the fella, you the boss, you preach to her. Show her how the cow eats the cabbage, you hopeless loser.
Okay, I couldn't get through this video without talking about the CGI for Garfield at least once. So let's just get it over with. Yes, it's bad. Really bad. Most of the times it looks like they're making it bad on purpose. But honestly, this is something that I couldn't even get past while I was watching Detective Pikachu. Basically, with as great as technology is, we can't make people interacting with CGI animals look realistic. At least not yet.
Betty, today, why don't you start me off with a Swedish massage, a manicure, and a pedicure, okay?
He calls her Betty, even though that her name tag says her name is Kelly. Sure, you could say that this is Garfield being the smug asshole that he is, but would the people making this movie don't care enough to even try at this point also be a possibility? Meanwhile, John's meeting with Liz in her office, hoping that she's gonna ask him out. But since God himself hates John as much as Garfield, of course she doesn't ask him out. Instead, she called him in to ask him to adopt Odie, who again, looks absolutely nothing like Odie.
His name's Odie, and he's not gonna make it if he has to live his life in a cage.
What makes him so different from the other dogs? Is it the fact that he's the only animal that doesn't talk in the whole movie? Maybe he does need special treatment. So after all that, we finally get to see Garfield meet Odie, and I'm honestly surprised that nobody's taking pictures. If you can believe it, we're not even a third of the way done with this movie.
John, it's not too late. Quickly, turn around before he finds out where we live!
They didn't even animate him into the car. They get back home and Garfield's now trying to adjust to his new life with Odie by pretending that he doesn't exist.
That's not normal. Not close. Oh, great. Dog cooties. Somebody inoculate me, please.
So I don't know if you caught that, because I didn't until my third time rewatching this, but you can literally see the hands of the person pushing Odie away. Do you really think they were trying with this movie at all? A while later, Garfield is outside trying to reset the milk contraption that he put Normal in earlier, and he tries to get Odie to do the same for whatever reason. And in retaliation, Odie kills Garfield.
Oh no.
Of course he survived, we're only 20 minutes in at this point. Odie decides to drink milk, because that's something that dogs do, and Garfield chases him to the same house with the dog from earlier. Only this time, the dog seems to have cut through his metal chain, and his owners just don't care at all. Then Normal and another cat, that I'm assuming is supposed to be Arlene considering 1, it's a girl,
If it wasn't for Odie, you'd be Luca's chew toy.
and 2, later in the movie Normal calls her Arlene. But they tried to make it hard to hear, so I don't know if they wanted to keep that in. I mean, with how lazy the editing has been so far, it wouldn't surprise me if they forgot to edit that out. Also, why the hell does she look more like Normal than Normal?
Odie's an imbecile until further notice.
That's how that scene ends? Sure, that wasn't abrupt at all. So now at night, Garfield tells Odie that John isn't gonna let him sleep on the bed, but that shouldn't really be a concern since I'm pretty sure that John is currently drowning in the bathroom. Of course John lets Odie sleep on the bed. I mean, he didn't exactly buy him his own bed to sleep on. That seems like something that Liz should have given him at the very least. The next morning, the movie decides to have some more casual animal abuse before deciding to just give up all hope and have Garfield and Odie dance together. And it goes on for a couple of minutes, until Normal and Arlene show up and finally end the torture. Then Liz shows up to take John and Odie to a dog show. Not to compete or anything, they just wanted to bring him. But before they can leave, Normal, who for some reason is either a stoner or just really stupid, makes Garfield believe that he's not John's favorite anymore.
That's gotta feel bad, being left by John while he takes Odie out. It's like you're not his favorite anymore.
Also, Arlene is just gone. She doesn't even say anything, she just disappeared. So now that Garfield is feeling jealous, he runs after John, and manages to catch up to a moving car. This is Garfield we're talking about. The cat that is too lazy to walk past his driveway without hyperventilating. He somehow managed to catch up to a moving vehicle. It's kind of weird that neither of them heard that, considering not only would that be the equivalent of a boulder slamming into the back of your car, but also, they are just sitting in complete silence.
I'll catch up with you. It's probably just a mild concussion or a skull fracture. Maybe I'll get a CAT scan. A CAT scan!
So they get to this dog show where Liz is just a judge for some reason. She's just a local vet, why is she there? Suddenly the movie remembers that stuff has to actually happen in order to keep the audience entertained. So Garfield gets chased around by a bunch of dogs, and this gives Odie the chance to dance, I think? He's just kinda hopping around on his hind legs, but I mean the audience is really loving it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is amazing!
It's just a dog standing on its hind legs spinning around a few times. Why are these people acting like they're watching a play on Broadway?
That is one talented dog!
Nothing in this movie makes sense, so I don't know why I'm trying to understand anything anymore.
This is for you. If you happen to change your mind, you just ring me up. You give me, hello, I changed my mind. I want to be a star.
There's no phone number or address on that card.
Our winner today, a fabulous dancing puppy called Odie!
This newspaper says it was printed in June of 2004, yet it costs 50 cents and is printed in black and white as if it were the 1950s. They get back to the house with Garfield hiding under the truck. Oh yeah, Garfield got away from the dogs, but I really just do not care at this point. And when he gets inside, he decides to take out his frustration on John's Rube Goldberg machine. So for once, John actually does something intelligent, and he puts Garfield outside for the night. And Garfield retaliates by torturing John by singing.
Used to have John to myself.
Because you know what this movie really needed? A musical number. And again, it goes on for a couple of minutes. So after Garfield whines about not having enough Twitter followers,
I've got no clout.
Odie comes outside to comfort him, and since he can have absolutely no redeeming qualities, he locks Odie outside of the house, and Odie runs away. You know, because he's a dog? That, and we're about halfway through the movie, so something interesting has to happen soon, and I guess this is close enough. After climbing up about 6 flights of stairs, an old woman somehow sees Odie laying outside her door, and she takes him inside. The next day, Liz shows up for a date with John that I didn't care enough to mention, and Liz admits that she also had a crush on John while they were in high school together. Because the best time to tell someone that you had a crush on them in high school is over 15 years after you graduate. John doesn't want to admit to Liz that Odie ran away because he thinks she's only going on this date with him because she wants to see Odie more, which is something that Liz doesn't actually deny, and instead she just tries to avoid the conversation.
Why didn't you just tell me?
I guess I figured he was the only reason you were spending time with me.
Come on.
No, I'm serious. I mean,
I mean, come on, let's go find him.
Then it cuts to that Happy Chapman guy from earlier, and uh-oh, he sees a found dog poster that the old lady put up. So they go to her house and she hands over the dog with pretty much 0 questions asked. So the movie finally has some sort of plot going on. Back at the house, Garfield's friends, I guess, tell him off for letting Odie outside at night. Garfield goes home and decides to watch TV because he has no sense of morality. But I guess that's a good thing because he sees Odie on Happy Chapman's show, so he decides to go out and look for him. He sneaks onto a bus and heads into city center. You know, the center of the city. Back at the house, John makes lasagna for Garfield. Okay, I'm gonna stop beating around it. John is obviously being cucked by Garfield. The day after he eats all of the groceries and destroys the house, he makes him his favorite dish.
I made your favorite, lasagna!
When he purposefully burned John when he was in the shower, not only did he cook him breakfast, but he also didn't get mad at him for swapping their dishes. The evidence has been there all along, people. Garfield, the self-proclaimed world's laziest cat, manages to make it to the city, but uh-oh, he's surrounded by rats now, and it looks like he's going to be eaten alive.
Finally, some meat.
Meat? No, it's not meat. They measured it. It's 100% body fat. No nutritional value whatsoever.
Hey, body fat's good with us.
Which is kind of morbid for a kid's movie, but Lewis comes in and saves him. You remember Lewis, right? That small mouse that wouldn't survive 15 seconds outside of Garfield's house? Lewis takes Garfield to the place where Odie is being held, and they hide in boxes so they don't get caught by animal control. But literally nobody cares that these 2 boxes are just sliding down the sidewalk by themselves. So Garfield sneaks into the ventilation system, and somehow the people inside are able to live track him inside the air vents. And for some reason this computer is still encased in the plastic that it was manufactured with.
John, stop the car!
Yeah, just stop in the middle of the street. After nearly an hour, we're finally headed towards the climax of this movie, with Garfield finally finding Odie.
We have a common purpose. We share John. John needs us even more. And I kind of want you back home, too.
Why? You caused this whole situation because you were jealous, and you locked him out of the house. You were perfectly fine when he wasn't out there the next morning. The only reason you even went out to find him was because your quote-unquote friends didn't want to tolerate you after you left a dog out to die. So don't feed me this bullshit, Garfield. You have not learned a goddamn thing. Anyway, Happy is using a shot collar to force Odie to do tricks, and for some reason they enter the room, take Odie out of his cage, and then put him into a new one, and now they're off to New York, where Odie will live an arguably better life with an owner who is able to financially keep him alive, and not be ruthlessly tortured by another animal in the house, and will instead be ruthlessly tortured with electrocution. A small price to pay for salvation if you ask me. But of course, Garfield attempts to chase after them, only to fall out of the building and die a miserable death. The end.
Once again, my life has been saved by the miracle of lasagna.
Honestly, if they did actually end this movie with Garfield dying, I think a lot of people would respect this movie more. He sees Odie, but oh no, he gets captured by animal control, because this movie wasn't moving slow enough. He goes to the pound and meets a cat named Sir Roland. Surprise! It's Happy Chapman's old stage cat who got replaced by Odie. So Garfield goes on this monologue about how he's changed and that he wants Odie to stay with him, but I feel like I've already expressed my opinions on that enough. Then this family comes into the pound to adopt a cat, which I guess is a thing you can do. The girl picks Sir Roland, but he breaks free and presses the giant-ass red button that sets every animal in the shelter free, which presumably caused complete chaos in the streets. Garfield escapes and runs to the train station, but oh no, he's too late. Then a whole lot of nothing happens. All you need to know is Happy Chapman hates lasagna.
I hate lasagna.
Which is somehow more offensive to me than the dog torture. Also, Garfield learns how to operate an entire train station in a matter of minutes. This movie was released in 2004. When was the last time anyone in the United States commuted by train? Oh, and Liz and John have been on essentially the exact same path as Garfield. And they're both currently in the exact same building, yet they never notice each other.
All stop.
Yeah, that's how that works. So Garfield manages to get the exact right train back to the station, and he finds Odie.
Good to see you, partner.
They start making their escape, but not without being in clear view of Happy and his boy toy Wendell. Happy runs after them and manages to corner them in a luggage storage room, because that suitcase, that is shorter than half the furniture in their house that we've seen them jump on, is clearly too much for them to get past. Happy yeets Garfield away, only for him to fall right in front of Sir Roland and one of the dogs from the pound. Because why wouldn't all of the animals follow Garfield to the train station and only now help him out? The rats from earlier also show up, which is weird considering that they 1. Don't even like Garfield, 2. Had no idea where he was, 3. Don't even know who Happy is, so why would they attack him, and 4. Who the hell cares, the movie's almost over anyways. All the animals team up and brutally murder Happy, because there is no way he actually survives being attacked by at least 30 wild animals. Of course, since this is a kids movie, Happy somehow survives, and now has the shock collar that he put on Odie tied around his neck. Wow, I can feel the pain. Garfield starts monologuing for about the 7th time, but since Happy can't understand what he's saying, he's just seeing this orange abomination looking at him, so his reaction seems kind of realistic. After about 10 minutes, John and Liz finally manage to catch up, and John Falcon punches Happy in the face for stealing his pets, and for some reason, Nermal and Arlene are just watching the news at their house, and they see Garfield and Odie being carried out, so they come to the conclusion that Garfield saved Odie, and all of his sins are now forgiven. John and Liz kiss because there had to be some sort of ending to their story, and now they're dating, I guess? I mean, Odie is still living with them, so maybe what John thought earlier is still true.
What?
And after 90 grueling minutes, the movie is finally over, but not before getting one last torture scene in for anyone that stuck around this long, with Garfield singing and dancing to one of the 2 songs on the soundtrack, I Feel Good by James Brown.
I feel good.
And the credits roll, with all the 5 characters that actually mattered, and everyone else just getting a vague description, like Red Cap and Larry. You know, the famous Garfield character Larry. Wait a minute, Jimmy Kimmel was in this movie? You mean to tell me that this dog...
Wait a minute. Did I just hear that right? You're a cat that's trying to rescue a dog?
Was played by famous late-night talk show host Jimmy Goddamn Kimmel, with such incredible talents behind this movie, like Loop De Loop, Brooke Brooks, and Mark Markham. Brooke Brooks and Mark Markham. Guys, I understand that you don't want your real name associated with this movie, but come on, at least give a believable name, like George Gugler. And that's the Garfield movie. Is it as bad as people make it out to be? Kind of. Looking at this movie now, I think it did actually age pretty well. Don't get me wrong, it is honestly terrible and very weird at times. And that's coming from someone who went into this with nostalgia completely blocking all of its problems for so many years. But it kind of has that so bad it's good feel. Not a lot, but kind of. I mean, it's a live-action Garfield movie. Expectations were pretty low the second the movie was announced. I don't know, this movie means so much to me, even now knowing its flaws. And there's a lot of them. It'll always hold a special place in my heart simply because of the amount of times I watched it as a kid. I've probably seen this movie more times than any other human on the planet, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be proud of that achievement. I just realized while recording the script that June 11th was the 15-year anniversary of this movie, so consider this a celebration to 15 years of the live-action Garfield movie. I was about to start another sad monologue about how nostalgic this movie makes me feel, but I feel like I shouldn't end 2 videos in a row like that. I need to remind myself that this is a YouTube channel and not a therapy session. Be sure to subscribe for more daily Garfield videos, follow me on Twitter, and buy my merch. Please God, I am in crippling debt, I need money so bad, my family is in poverty, please buy my merch.
Psycho Wolfyy, suck a big fat fucking cock, man. I don't give a shit.